My parents listed my home for sale while I was away. When I confronted them, they said they needed the money to pay for my sister's honeymoon trip. She deserves a perfect start to marriage, Mom explained. 3 buyers had already put down deposits and the closing was set for next week. I smiled and handed them something which left their faces white. I'm 28M, and I work in cybersecurity for a major tech company. 3 years ago, I bought my first house, a beautiful 3-bedroom colonial in a great neighborhood. I put down 20% and have been paying the mortgage religiously ever since. The house is 100% in my name, and I have all the documentation to prove it. My parents, Dad 55, Mom 52, have always played favorites with my younger sister Emma, 24F. Don't get me wrong, I love Emma, but our parents have coddled her since birth. They paid for her entire college education, I got student loans, bought her a car, I saved up for mine, and basically handed her everything on a silver platter. I learned early on to be independent because I knew I couldn't rely on them for financial support. Emma got engaged 6 months ago to her boyfriend Jake, 26M. Nice guy, but they're both still finding their footing career-wise. Emma works part-time at a boutique, and Jake just started an entry-level position at a marketing firm. They're planning this elaborate destination wedding in Tuscany that's costing them, well, mostly my parents, about $75,000. Last month, I had to travel to Singapore for a 3-week work assignment. It was a big project, and I was excited about the opportunity. Before leaving, I asked my parents if they could check on my house occasionally, water the plants, collect mail, basic stuff. They had spare keys from when they helped me move in. Of course, sweetheart, Mom said. We'll take good care of everything. I should have known something was off when Dad seemed unusually interested in my travel dates and kept asking if anyone else had keys to the house. I returned home last Wednesday evening, exhausted from the long flight. As I turned onto my street, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There was a large for sale sign planted right in my front yard, complete with a real estate agent's contact information and under contract banner. I sat in my car for a full 5 minutes, thinking I was hallucinating from jet lag. But no, there it was, my house, apparently sold while I was halfway around the world. I rushed inside and immediately called the number on the sign. The agent, Karen Stevens, answered on the second ring. Hi, I'm calling about the house at 1247 Oak Street, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Oh, wonderful. Yes, that's one of our hottest properties. We actually have multiple offers and the closing is scheduled for next Tuesday. Are you interested in making an offer? I should warn you, we're already well above asking price. When was this house listed? I asked. About 2 weeks ago. The sellers were very motivated, they need a quick sale for a family emergency. Beautiful property though, great bones, well maintained. The sellers really took care of the place. I hung up and immediately drove to my parents' house. I found them in their living room, looking through what appeared to be travel brochures. Emma was there too, showing them pictures on her phone. These villas are absolutely gorgeous, Emma was saying. And the one with the infinity pool is only $500 more per night. She stopped when she saw me standing in the doorway. Surprise, Mom said, jumping up with fake enthusiasm. You're back early. How was Singapore? I could see the panic flash across her face for just a moment before she composed herself. Dad was slower to react, and I caught him hastily shoving some papers under a couch cushion. Cut the act, Mom. Why is there a for sale sign in my yard? The room went silent. Dad cleared his throat and looked at Mom, who suddenly became very interested in the travel brochures. Emma's face had gone pale, and she was looking back and forth between our parents with confusion. We can explain, Dad said finally, his voice lacking its usual confidence. I'm listening. I crossed my arms and remained standing in the doorway, blocking their exit. I wanted them to feel trapped, the way I'd felt when I saw that sign. Mom took a deep breath and launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. Honey, we know this might seem shocking, but we had to make a difficult decision while you were away. Emma's wedding is next month, and we've hit some unexpected expenses. What does that have to do with my house? I could feel my voice rising, but I didn't care. The honeymoon, Emma said quietly, finally understanding what was happening. Jake and I found this amazing villa in Tuscany for after the wedding, but it's way more expensive than we originally budgeted. We'd have to cancel if we can't come up with the money. I stared at them in disbelief. The casual way they were discussing this, as if selling someone else's house was a normal solution to a budget shortfall, made my blood boil. So you decided to sell my house? Each word came out carefully controlled, but I could feel the rage building behind them. You're always talking about wanting to travel more, maybe move to a different city, Mom said, her voice getting defensive. And you could use the money to pay off your student loans. It's really a win-win situation. That's when I snapped. A win-win? Are you insane? That's my house. My mortgage. My investment. I was shouting now, 3 years of suppressed frustration pouring out. I've worked 60-hour weeks for 3 years to afford that house. I've sacrificed vacations, dinners out, new clothes, everything to make those mortgage payments. Emma shrank back into the couch, tears starting to form in her eyes. She'd never heard me raise my voice like this before. Dad stood up, trying to assert some paternal authority. Now son, Calm down. We've already got 3 serious buyers who've put down earnest money. The closing is set for Tuesday. You'll walk away with almost $150,000 after paying off the mortgage. I don't want to walk away with anything. I want to live in my house that I bought with my money. I was pacing now, the adrenaline making it impossible to stand still. And how exactly did you manage to list my house that's in my name? I demanded, though I was starting to suspect the answer. Mom and Dad exchanged another look, the kind of silent communication that long-married couples develop when they're about to lie to their children. Well, Mom said carefully, you remember when you were buying the house, and the paperwork was so complicated? We helped you with some of the documents. The realization hit me like a truck. You forged my signature. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma gasped audibly. Dad's face had gone red, and Mom was wringing her hands nervously. We prefer to think of it as helping manage your affairs while you were away, Dad said, his voice weak and unconvincing. Emma deserves a perfect start to her marriage. She's been planning this wedding for months, and this honeymoon is part of her dream. I turned to look at him directly. Emma deserves a perfect start to marriage. What about what I deserve? What about my dreams? What about my right to own property without worrying that my own parents will steal it from me? We weren't stealing, Mom protested weakly. We were going to give you the money. After taking your cut to pay for Emma's vacation, I interrupted. How much were you planning to skim off the top? How much of my money were you going to spend on my sister's honeymoon? The guilty looks on their faces told me everything I needed to know. Emma finally spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know they were going to sell your house, I swear. They just said they had found a way to pay for the upgraded honeymoon package. I looked at my baby sister, who I'd always protected and loved despite our parents' favoritism. For a moment, I saw her as she really was, not malicious, but willfully naive. She'd learned to accept gifts without questioning their source because questioning might mean losing them. And you didn't think to ask where they were getting $50,000 for your vacation? I asked, though my voice was gentler with her than it had been with our parents. She looked down at her hands, shame coloring her cheeks. I guess I didn't want to know. The honesty of that admission hit me harder than any lie could have. She didn't want to know because deep down, she suspected it wasn't legitimate. But not knowing meant she could enjoy the benefits without feeling guilty about the cost. Emma, I said, sitting down across from her, when someone offers you something that seems too good to be true, it usually is. $50,000 doesn't just appear out of nowhere, especially not when Mom and Dad have been struggling financially for years. She nodded miserably. I know that now. I wanted the perfect wedding so badly that I didn't let myself think about it too hard. Dad cleared his throat again. Look, son, what's done is done. The contracts are signed, the buyers are excited, and frankly, we need this money. Emma's not the only one who benefits, we're drowning in debt here. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you committed to paying for a wedding you couldn't afford, I shot back. Maybe you should have had an honest conversation with Emma about what you could and couldn't provide instead of lying to everyone, including yourselves. Mom started crying then, the kind of manipulative tears she'd used to get her way since I was a child. We just wanted to give our daughter a beautiful wedding. Is that so wrong? Not with your own money, no. But with my money? With my house? Yes, that's wrong. That's fraud, Mom. That's a felony. I left that night without saying another word. I needed time to think, and more importantly, I needed to make some phone calls. The drive home was a blur. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, trying to understand how my own parents could betray me so completely. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. This wasn't just about money, this was about respect, boundaries, and the fundamental trust that should exist between family members. When I got home, I poured myself a large glass of whiskey and sat in my kitchen, staring at the for sale sign that was still mocking me from my front yard. That sign represented everything wrong with my family dynamic. Emma's needs always came first, my parents always found a way to justify their favoritism, and I was expected to just accept it. Not this time. First, I contacted Karen Stevens again and explained the situation. She was horrified to learn that the house had been listed fraudulently and immediately agreed to cooperate with whatever legal action I decided to take. In 30 years of real estate, she told me, I've never seen anything quite like this. Family disputes over property are common, but outright forgery? That's a new one for me. She also provided me with copies of all the paperwork my parents had signed, including the listing agreement and the purchase agreements from the 3 buyers. Having these documents would be crucial for what I was planning. Next, I called my lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen who specializes in real estate fraud. She was fascinated by the case and agreed to take it on. This is pretty clear-cut fraud and forgery, she told me. But the fact that they're family members complicates things. Are you sure you want to pursue this legally? They sold my house without my knowledge or consent to pay for my sister's vacation. What do you think? I think we're going to make your parents very uncomfortable. Let me make some calls. Patricia explained that because the property was solely in my name and I had never given permission for the sale, my parents had committed several serious crimes. The forgery alone was a felony, but when combined with the real estate fraud and the financial impact on the buyers, we were looking at potential federal charges. The good news, she said, is that we caught this before any money actually changed hands. If the sale had gone through, this would be much more complicated. Then I did something that I'm particularly proud of. I called my boss and explained the situation. My company has excellent legal resources, and they were outraged that someone had tried to defraud one of their employees. They immediately put me in touch with their corporate legal team. We take care of our people, my boss told me. If you need time off to deal with this, take it. And don't worry about the legal costs, we've got your back. Having my company's support meant I could afford to hire additional experts, including the handwriting analyst and a private investigator to look into my parents' financial situation. The private investigator, a former FBI agent named Marcus, was thorough and discreet. Within 48 hours, he had compiled a comprehensive report on my parents' finances that painted a picture of desperation and poor decision-making. Finally, I spent some time researching my parents' finances myself. I knew they'd overextended themselves with Emma's wedding, but I needed to understand just how bad their situation was. What I found was worse than I thought. They'd taken out a second mortgage on their house, maxed out multiple credit cards, and even borrowed against Dad's 401k. They were in deep financial trouble, and selling my house was their Hail Mary to avoid bankruptcy. But there was more. The private investigator had uncovered a pattern of financial irresponsibility going back years. They'd refinanced their house 3 times in the past decade, always pulling out equity to pay for Emma's expenses, her car, her college tuition, her study abroad program, and now her wedding. They'd also been hiding their financial problems from both Emma and me. Emma genuinely believed they could afford her expensive wedding, because they'd never been honest with her about their situation. They'd been robbing Peter to pay Paul for so long that they'd forgotten the difference between having money and having access to credit. The investigator also discovered something that made my blood boil. My parents had been intercepting mail sent to my address for months, including several important documents from my mortgage company and insurance provider. They'd been studying my financial situation, probably planning this scheme for longer than I realized. Marcus also found evidence that they'd attempted to open a credit card in my name 3 months earlier, but the application had been denied due to security measures I'd put in place after a data breach at my previous job. They'd been escalating their attempts to access my finances, and when all else failed, they decided to just sell my house. Over the next 2 days, I worked with Patricia and Marcus to build an airtight case. We documented everything: the forged signatures, the financial desperation, the pattern of deception, and the impact on the innocent buyers who'd put down deposits on my house. I also took time to process my emotions. This wasn't just about the money or even the house. This was about my parents viewing me as a resource to be exploited rather than a son to be respected. They'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and I needed to make sure they understood the gravity of what they'd done. The hardest part was accepting that my relationship with my parents might never recover from this. I'd always known they favored Emma, but I'd never imagined they would commit crimes to support her lifestyle. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd expected, and I found myself grieving the parents I thought I had. But I also felt a strange sense of liberation. For years, I'd been the responsible one, the one who didn't ask for help, the one who quietly accepted being treated as less important than Emma. This time, I wasn't going to quietly accept anything. This time, there would be consequences. The next morning, I went back to my parents' house with a folder full of documents. I found them at the kitchen table, looking stressed and whispering to each other. "We need to talk," I said, sitting down across from them. "Look, son," Dad started, "we know you're upset, but the closing is in 4 days. It's too late to back out now. The buyers have already secured financing, and we've promised Karen that." I held up my hand to stop him. "I have some documents for you to look at." I reached into my folder and pulled out the first set of papers. These are copies of all the mortgage documents for my house. As you can see, my name is the only one on the deed, the mortgage application, and all related paperwork. Mom shifted uncomfortably. "We know that, but these," I continued, pulling out another set of papers, "are copies of the listing agreement you signed with Karen Stevens. I've had a handwriting expert compare the signature on this document with my actual signature from my mortgage paperwork." Dad's face was starting to lose color. "The expert's report concludes that the signature was forged. She estimates that whoever forged it spent considerable time practicing my signature, but there are still clear discrepancies that would hold up in court." I pulled out another document. "This is a cease and desist order from my attorney, demanding that you immediately halt the sale of my property and contact all potential buyers to inform them that the sale is fraudulent." Emma had appeared in the doorway and was listening with wide eyes. "And this," I said, producing the next set of papers, "is a criminal complaint I've filed with the district attorney's office for real estate fraud, forgery, and identity theft." Mom gasped. "You're pressing charges against us?" "I'm giving you a choice," I said calmly. "You can voluntarily cancel the sale, return all earnest money to the buyers, and publicly apologize for the fraud, or you can explain to a judge why you thought it was acceptable to steal your son's house." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "This is ridiculous. We're your parents. We wouldn't steal from you." I smiled, the cold smile I usually reserved for hackers who thought they could outsmart me at work. "Then what would you call selling someone else's property without their knowledge or consent?" The room went quiet except for the sound of Mom crying. "But Emma's honeymoon," she whispered. We already promised her. That's not my problem. You made a promise you couldn't keep using money you didn't have by selling something that wasn't yours. Actions have consequences. I pulled out one final document. And this is the best part. Emma stepped closer. What is it? It's a full financial background check on Mom and Dad. It turns out that attempting to sell my house isn't their only financial crime. I looked directly at my parents. Did you know that it's illegal to lie on a mortgage application? Because when you took out that second mortgage 6 months ago, you claimed that your household income was $20,000 higher than it actually is. Dad's face went completely white. You also failed to disclose the loan you took against your 401k, which is required information when applying for a mortgage. That's mortgage fraud, which is a federal crime. Mom was hyperventilating now. We didn't know. We thought. And here's the really interesting part, I continued. I did some digging into your finances, and it appears you've been using Emma's identity to open credit cards. 3 of them, actually, with a combined balance of about $15,000. Emma's mouth fell open. What? I handed her copies of the credit card statements. Check the signatures. Look familiar? She flipped through the pages, her face getting paler with each one. These are definitely not my signatures. But they used my social security number, my birthday. Identity theft, I said. Another federal crime. The room was dead silent. Dad had sunk into his chair and was staring at the table. Mom was crying harder now. Emma was standing frozen, still holding the credit card statements. So here's what's going to happen, I said, standing up. You're going to call Karen Stevens right now and tell her the sale is canceled due to fraud. You're going to return every penny of earnest money to those buyers. You're going to pay for any costs they incurred because of your fraud, inspections, financing fees, whatever. We don't have that kind of money, Dad whispered. Then you're going to figure it out. Sell your car, downsize your house, cash out what's left of your retirement. I don't care how you do it, but you're going to make this right. I looked at Emma. And you're going to have to scale back your honeymoon plans. Way back. Because your parents committed multiple felonies trying to pay for your vacation. I didn't know, she said, tears streaming down her face. I swear I didn't know about any of this. I believe you. But you're still going to have to deal with the credit cards they opened in your name. I'd suggest freezing your credit immediately and filing a police report. I turned back to my parents. You have 24 hours to cancel the sale and start making this right. If you don't, I'll hand all of this evidence over to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. And unlike local police, federal agents don't care that you're my parents. I left them with copies of all the documents and went home to wait. That evening, Karen Stevens called me. Your parents contacted me this afternoon and canceled the listing. They seemed very upset. They're coordinating with the buyers to return all deposits and cover additional costs. Good. I have to ask, are you really going to press charges? That depends on how cooperative they are going forward. The next day, Emma came to see me. She looked like she hadn't slept. I talked to Jake, she said. We're postponing the honeymoon. We're going to do a long weekend at a cabin in the mountains instead. That sounds nice. I also filed a police report about the credit cards and froze my credit. The officer said I should probably get a lawyer. Probably a good idea. She sat down on my couch and started crying again. I'm so sorry. I know you think I knew what they were doing, but I swear I didn't. I've always been so focused on what I wanted that I never questioned where the money was coming from. I sighed and sat down next to her. Despite everything, she was still my little sister. I don't think you knew about the house, I said. But you had to know they were spending way beyond their means for your wedding. I did know that. I guess I thought it was their choice to make. I didn't realize they were breaking laws to do it. Emma, they could go to prison for this. Fraud, forgery, identity theft, these are serious crimes. Are you going to turn them in? I was quiet for a long moment. I don't know yet. It depends on what they do next. Over the next week, my parents worked frantically to undo the damage. They canceled the house sale and returned all deposits, paid almost $8,000 in fees and costs to the affected buyers, contacted the credit card companies to report the fraudulent accounts opened in Emma's name, started working with a financial counselor to address their debt problems, agreed to pay me $2,000 to cover my legal fees. The process wasn't smooth. Karen Stevens had to work overtime to contact all the buyers and explain the situation. 2 of the 3 buyers were understanding, especially after my parents agreed to cover their inspection costs and attorney fees. The 3rd buyer was furious and threatened to sue for breach of contract. That buyer, a young couple named the Hendersons, had already given notice at their apartment and arranged for movers. They'd been planning to close on my house the following Tuesday and move in that weekend. When they learned the sale was fraudulent, Mrs. Henderson broke down in tears right there in Karen's office. We've been looking for a house for 2 years, she sobbed. We finally found the perfect place, and now we have nowhere to go. Our lease is up, our stuff is packed, and we've already enrolled our daughter in the school district. My parents had to scramble to find them temporary housing and cover their moving expenses twice, once to move their belongings into storage, and again when they eventually found another house 3 weeks later. The total cost to compensate the Hendersons was nearly $4,000. The financial counselor my parents started working with was brutally honest about their situation. During their first meeting, which I attended at their request, she laid out the harsh reality. "You're essentially bankrupt," she told them. "You have negative net worth, no savings, and you're carrying debt that would take you 15 years to pay off at your current income level." She recommended they consider selling their house and downsizing immediately. "The equity in your home is the only thing keeping you from complete financial ruin," she explained. "If you don't act soon, you'll lose it to foreclosure anyway." Mom cried through most of that meeting. Dad sat in stunned silence as the counselor explained how their financial decisions over the past decade had created an unsustainable situation. "We just wanted to give Emma everything we never had," Mom whispered. "I understand," the counselor replied, "but you can't give away money you don't have. And you certainly can't steal it from your other child." Most importantly, they sat down with Emma and Jake and had an honest conversation about their financial situation. The elaborate Tuscany wedding was scaled back to a simple ceremony at a local venue, and the honeymoon became a weekend camping trip. That conversation was particularly difficult. Emma had always believed our parents were financially comfortable, and learning the truth shattered her perception of our family's stability. "You mean we've been poor this whole time?" she asked, her voice small and confused. "Not poor," Dad said carefully, "but we've been living beyond our means for years. We kept thinking we'd find a way to catch up, but instead we just dug ourselves deeper." Jake, who had been quiet throughout most of the conversation, finally spoke up. "Why didn't you tell us sooner? We could have planned a smaller wedding from the beginning." "We didn't want to disappoint Emma," Mom said. "She'd been dreaming of this wedding since she was little." "I'd rather have a small wedding than know my parents committed crimes to pay for it," Emma said, her voice stronger now. "I'd rather have honest parents than expensive flowers." The wedding planning process became a lesson in reality for everyone involved. Emma and Jake had to make difficult choices about what was truly important to them. They kept the church ceremony but moved the reception to our parents' backyard. They hired a DJ instead of a band, asked friends to help with photography, and served a simple buffet dinner instead of a plated meal. Emma also had to return most of the expensive items on her registry and exchange them for more practical gifts. The designer wedding dress went back to the store, replaced by a beautiful but affordable gown from a local bridal shop. "It's actually better this way," Emma told me as we worked together to set up lights in our parents' backyard the day before the wedding. "I was so focused on having the perfect Instagram-worthy wedding that I forgot it was supposed to be about marrying Jake." Jake stepped up in ways that impressed me. He took on extra freelance projects to help pay for the scaled-down wedding, and he was nothing but supportive as Emma dealt with the disappointment of losing her dream celebration. "The wedding is one day," he told her. "Our marriage is supposed to last forever. I'd rather start our marriage debt-free and honest than in debt and pretending everything is fine." Dad also made the decision to take early retirement and find part-time work to help pay down their debt. At 55, he was too young for full Social Security benefits, but the stress of his corporate job combined with their financial crisis had taken a toll on his health. He found work as a part-time consultant for his old company, which gave him some income while allowing him to focus on their financial recovery. It was a significant pay cut, but it also meant he could take on the project of rebuilding their family's financial foundation. Mom got a job at a local department store, her first job in over 20 years. The adjustment was difficult for her. She'd been a stay-at-home mom since Emma was born, and suddenly finding herself working retail at 52 was a humbling experience. "I never realized how hard it is to earn money," she told me during one of our counseling sessions. "It's so much easier to spend it than to make it." Her first paycheck was $347 for 2 weeks of work. She stared at it for a long time before showing it to me. "This is what I spent on Emma's bridal shower decorations," she said quietly. 2 weeks of work for decorations that got thrown away the next day. The experience gave her a new perspective on the value of money and the weight of financial responsibility. For the first time in years, she understood the difference between wanting something and being able to afford it. "It's been 2 months since all this went down. My parents and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship, but things will never be the same. The trust is gone, and I don't think it's ever coming back completely. The rebuilding process hasn't been easy. We started with supervised meetings at a family counselor's office, where we could talk through what happened in a controlled environment. The counselor, Dr. Martinez, specializes in family financial trauma and helped us understand the psychological dynamics that led to this situation. During our sessions, some painful truths came out. Mom admitted that she'd always resented having to support me financially when I was younger, and she saw Emma as her chance to be the generous, supportive mother she'd always wanted to be. Dad revealed that he'd been feeling like a failure as a provider and that giving Emma everything she wanted made him feel successful. "We never saw you as needing our help," Mom said during one particularly difficult session. "You were always so independent, so capable. Emma needed us more." "That doesn't justify stealing from me," I replied. "And it doesn't explain why you never asked if I needed help. You just assumed I didn't." The counselor helped us establish new boundaries and communication patterns. My parents had to accept that their actions had legal and emotional consequences that couldn't be easily undone. I had to work through my anger and decide whether I wanted to salvage any relationship with them at all. Emma and Jake had their scaled-down wedding last month, and it was actually beautiful. Sometimes simple is better than extravagant. The ceremony was held in my parents' backyard, with about 30 close friends and family members. Emma wore a simple dress she bought off the rack, and Jake's college buddy officiated. What made it special wasn't the cost, it was the genuine love and happiness everyone felt. Emma seemed more relaxed and present than I'd ever seen her at any of her previous milestone events. She and Jake wrote their own vows, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house when they talked about facing life's challenges together. Emma seems to have learned something from this experience. She's taken on more hours at work and is talking about going back to school to finish her degree. She's also been paying back the money she unknowingly spent from the fraudulent credit cards, even though she wasn't legally obligated to do so. "I want to earn what I have," she told me recently. "I don't want to wonder if my success is real or if someone else sacrificed for it." Jake has been incredibly supportive throughout this whole ordeal. He initially wanted to confront my parents himself, but Emma convinced him to let the legal process handle it. He's also been encouraging Emma to build her own financial independence and has taken on extra freelance work to help them pay down their debts faster. I decided not to pursue criminal charges as long as my parents continue to make restitution to everyone affected by their fraud. They're still paying off the costs from the canceled house sale, but they're making progress. The total amount they owe is around $12,000, which they're paying back at $500 per month. My house is still mine, obviously. I've since added some extra security measures and changed all the locks. I've also made it very clear to my parents that they are never to have access to my home again. They've accepted this boundary, though I can tell it hurts them. The physical changes I made to my house were just the beginning. I also hired a financial advisor to help me better protect my assets and set up additional safeguards against identity theft. I've learned that independence isn't just about making your own money, it's about protecting it too. I've also been working with a therapist individually to process the betrayal and figure out how to move forward with my family relationships. It's been helpful to have a neutral space to work through my feelings without worrying about hurting anyone else. The most surprising development has been how this experience has affected my relationship with Emma. We're actually closer now than we've been in years. She sees me as a person rather than just her older brother, and I see her as someone who's capable of growth and change. "I never realized how much our parents' favoritism hurt you," she told me during a recent conversation. "I thought you didn't care because you never said anything." I did care, I admitted. I just learned early that complaining wouldn't change anything, so I focused on taking care of myself. We've started having regular coffee dates where we talk about our goals, our relationships, and our family dynamics. It's been refreshing to have an honest relationship with her for the first time in our adult lives. The whole experience has taught me that sometimes the worst betrayals come from the people who are supposed to love and protect you. But it's also taught me that standing up for yourself, even when it's difficult and painful, is worth it. I'm proud of how I handled the situation, and I'm proud of the person I've become through it. My parents and I may never have the close relationship I once hoped for, but we have an honest one. And sometimes, that's the best you can do.